We can use FOIL to multiply radicals, as we are going to see on this example. We have parentheses 4 square root of 3 plus 5 square root of 2, and we want to multiply this by 3 square root of 2 minus 6. So we want to simplify this expression. So we are going to use FOIL. We're going to do the first time the first. We're going to do the outside, the first and the last, the outer. Then we are going to do the inner. Then we are going to do the last. So equals, we want to multiply this by this. So it's going to be 4 root 3 multiplied by 3 square root of 2. Then positive times negative is negative. We want to multiply 4 root 3 times regular 6. Then we want to do the inner. Positive times positive is positive. 5 root 2 times 3 root 2. Then we want to do the outer. Positive times negative is negative. 5 root 2 times 6 equals 4. We want to multiply these two, so we multiply 4 times 3, that's 12, and then we multiply root 3 times root 2, which is root 6, minus, that's regular number multiplied by the 4, we get 6 times 4, which is 24 root 3, plus 5 times 3, 15, square root of 2 times 2, 2 squared, which is regular 2, minus, that's regular number multiplied by the 5, so we get 30 root 2. We just need to get the answer for this. Bring down the 12 root 6 minus the 24 root 3 plus square root of 2 power 2. You divide the 2 by the index. Even though that's even, and the answer is going to be odd, we don't use absolute value because this 2, as we can see it, this base is already positive, so you don't need absolute value. So that's going to be 15 times 2. That's going to be regular 2. So 15 times 2 is 30 minus 30 square root of 2. Is there any like terms in here? That's root 6, that's root 3. They are not like term. That's root 2. Same thing, they are not like terms. So that's our final answer. Now you can practice these two problems. Six root 3 minus 5. That's first problem here. 6 root 3 minus 5 multiplied by 2 root 5 plus 4 square root of 2. The second problem you want to practice, parentheses, 7 square root of 2 minus 3 square root of 3 multiplied by 7 square root of 2 plus 3 square root of 3. So try to do these two problems, then come back and check if it's correct or not. The final answer for the first problem, for this one, is going to be 12 square root of 15 minus 10 square root of 5 plus 24 square root of 6 minus 20 square root of 2. The answer for the second problem is going to be 71. algebra 1, I hope that you still remember, guys, that when we multiply sum and difference, the answer is difference between two squares. Like if I have x minus y and I want to multiply it by x plus y, the answer is difference of two squares, x squared minus y squared. Because the inner is negative xy and the outer is positive xy, they cancel each other out and you end up with x squared minus y squared. We use this this rule to simplify radicals also. So we have something called conjugate. What is conjugate? If you have something look like this, a square root of b plus c square root of d, and you have another quantity, a square root of b minus c square root of d. So this looks like these two, sum and difference. The first is same like the first, the last same like the last. The only difference is one of them negative in between or minus in between and one of them plus, like this one. So these two, we call them conjugates. And when we multiply two conjugates, the answer is rational number. You remember conjugate only when that's square root and that's square root, and this is also square root, not cubic root, not fourth root. And when you multiply them, you get real number. A root b plus c root d, when you multiply it by its conjugate, which is a root b minus c root d, you get difference of two squares. You get square of the first, square of a square root of b, minus you get square of the second, which is c square root of d, equals, when you square this one, you square the a times a is a squared, then square root of b times square root of b, any square root times itself is give you whatever inside. So that's going to be square root of 2 times b, minus that's going to be c squared, and when you multiply square root of d times square root of d, you get regular d. So you get a squared b minus c squared d. And we're going to see example how this can help us to simplify radicals. So we want to simplify two over square root of 5 minus 1. Now the denominator over here doesn't have one radical. It has radical minus regular number. It has two terms. So if you try to use the previous trick we used to do to get rid of the square root of 5, and you multiply this denominator by square root of 5, when you distribute the square root of 5, that's going to be square root of 25, which is going to be regular 5, but this negative 1 is going to be multiplied by the root 5, so you're going to have 25 minus root 5, so you don't get rid of the denominator. So over here we use the conjugate. So when the denominator is binomial like this, and one of them has a square root, you multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. The conjugate is the same two terms, but you change the sign in the middle. So you need to multiply by root 5 plus 1. You multiply this also by root 5 plus 1. On the top, when you multiply the 2, you have to distribute the 2, distributive property. 2 times root 5 will be 2 square root of 5. Positive times positive is positive. 2 times 1 is 2. On the denominator, when you multiply anything by its conjugate, it's going to be difference of two squares. Square of the first minus square of the second. The top, these are not like terms because this has root 5, this doesn't have root 5. So nothing could be done for the numerator. Square root of 5 squared, that's going to be 5. Square root of 1 squared, that's going to be 1, so it's 5 minus 1. So it's going to be 2 square root of 5 plus 2 over 5 minus 1, which is 4. Now over here you can see that 2 is a common factor between these two terms. You can factor out the 2. So it's going to be 2 parentheses root 5 plus 1. Then you divide that by 4. So now 2 is a factor because it's multiplied by another quantity. So we can cancel or reduce this. By 2 is 1, by 2 is 2. So your final answer is root 5 plus 1 all divided by 2, which also could be written as root 5 over 2 plus 1 over 2. You distribute that 2 to the square root of 5 and you distribute that to the 1. So it's root 5 over 2 plus 1 half. We always like to write the radical at the end, or it doesn't matter. 1 half plus root 5 over 2.